everything is actually gorgeously meaningless. Like people have a sense of their search for the real me. I want to find who I truly am and all of this. And all they will find is another narrative. You will never find you. And the reason you won't find you is there's no you to find. It's too ordinary, obvious, easy, simple, direct. There's just aliveness. And aliveness is nothing being everything. What's most yearned for is what we're most afraid of. Like there's no me that's thinking these thoughts. Actually, full-on aliveness, there's no room for you. There's no such thing as non-duality. There's not you and the world. It's that simple. There's not life and you with your life. I mean, it's ridiculous. How can you have a life? So the suggestion is very, very simple. There's no you that's living their life. There's just what's appearing to happen. And that sense of separation can appear to completely collapse. And it's very simple. It's just isness, aliveness. So all there is liberation. I don't give a shit about non-duality, to be honest. But none of this is right or wrong, by the way. It's just what appears to happen.
Dear friend of philosophy, I welcome you to the Key Philosophy Quest. I am Dr. Hellmut Monz, and I invite you to join me on the quest of asking the key questions of philosophy. In this episode of the Key Philosophy Quest, I have philosophical questions for Kenneth Madden. Kenneth is a speaker on non-duality from Ireland. He is currently writing his literary debut, and we hope to see it published in the beginning of 2025. He speaks online, but also holds meetings on non-duality across Europe. It was a pleasure and honor to have met him on the island Quoc in the south of Vietnam. Let's see what Kenneth has to say.
Okay, so I have prepared a list of very important questions. We're gonna ramble through them. It's around 12 questions.
Yeah.
And then we see where they get us. What appears to be true?
Truth is in the story. So truth is a story, what I would suggest. So in the context of feeling like an individual, that you have a life, that what I would refer to that as is being a dualistic dream, or what people perceive as reality. And in that reality, then there's true and not true in a story.
Okay, maybe let's stick to that. So is then truth an appearance?
The truth is part of the story. It's an appearance in the story, yeah. And it relates to its opposite, not being true. So it's a play of opposites. Feeling like an individual is a play of opposites, in which you have true, not true, good, bad, special, not special, all of these. And those appear to be absolute opposites when you feel you have a life.
What is really true?
Again, it's a story. So if you want to find real truth, it's still within the story. So in the story, you'd want to find what appears to be true, and then something behind that called real truth, or sometimes referred to as ultimate reality. And from this, there's no ultimate reality, actually. So it's still going around the story, trying to find something in the story that's really true. That not just appears to be true, that's really true. So what's been suggested here is not true in that sense. It's a suggestion. That's all it is a suggestion. And when it's heard, it's seen that actually what you take to be real and true or not true is a narrative or a story in which it can appear to be true.
What is truly free?
Absolutely, whatever appears to be happening is absolute freedom already. So we wonder about boundless freedom, and this is boundless freedom. So boundless freedom is the sounds here, the sitting on the chair, the sensation of the air conditioning, the sound of the air conditioning, a thought that arises, and a sensation maybe of not being free. That would be boundless freedom appearing as not being free. Because if it's boundlessly free, then it will appear to be bound also.
What is this really?
This is undescribable and unknowable. but you feel it's knowable when you feel like an individual. So the sense that you may have of feeling that you are there, like it's your body, you're here, you're thinking, you're speaking, you're sitting, your emotions, everything. So it's all filtered through this you. Then this is real. Then there's a sense of you're real and everything is real. And actually, it's just energy.
What is the meaning of being?
So meaning is in the story then. So when you feel you have a life, then everything has meaning from your sense of you having a life. Then you feel that you're being and other people are being, and then everything is imbued with meaning from your sense of knowing, because there's the world and there's you. So any meaning that can be found is contextual to your reality. So everything is actually gorgeously meaningless.
What is the nature of thinking?
Just synapses in the brain, just an aspect of aliveness. One of the senses, I would say, emotions, hearing, thinking, seeing, smelling, touch. It's just one of the difficulty is you feel that you're thinking, and you feel that they're your thoughts actually. So when you feel that you are an individual, there's a really lived sense that there's a you there that is thinking. So then it's your thoughts, and they are your thoughts. So the suggestion is very simple, actually, that they're just thoughts, which thoughts are actually just energy, because all there is energy. So it's a synapse in the brain, and then you then feel it's your thought. So then energetically there's a loop in it where you feel it's your thought, and it has a different quality to it, and you feel you're thinking.
So the thinker thinking thoughts, that's a story.
Yeah. So there's just the suggestion is that there's just what's appearing to happen. It's very, very, very simple and ordinary, and already whatever's appearing to happen. So when there's thinking, there's thinking. So the difficulty or the apparent difficulty or apparent problem is that you feel you're thinking, just as you feel, if you go through all of the senses, it's the same thing. So when there's an emotion, and say there's anger, you would feel it's your anger, and so on, so on, so on. So there's a constant, or what appears as constant, reflexive referring back to this sense of a me. And actually, that's very dissatisfying. To a greater or lesser degree. And then there's a question out of that then.
Speaking of questions, next one. What is the true nature of everything and nothing?
Everything is nothing and nothing is everything. They're not two different things, in the same sense that we think in this dichotomy of life and death. So we feel we're living our lives. We're told we're living our lives. And from when we're very young, it's reinforced with us that we have a life to live, and we're living our life, so we can live it well or we can live it badly. And then we have this lived sense of a dichotomy between a thing called life and a thing called death. And it's an illusion, because there's no thing called life or a thing called death. In the exact same way that there's not a thing called nothing and a thing called and something else called everything. So you could substitute nothing and everything with death and life. It's the same thing we're talking about. So the simple realization is that there's just aliveness or energy, and nothing appears as everything. Simple. And that's unknowable, actually. That's not. That you think that's something you can know or understand, and any understanding will just be an abstraction.
What does neither appear nor disappear?
It's the same as you're there and you're not there. You know, you could say nothing is everything and everything is nothing. You could say it's real and it's unreal, and you can say that it's not real or unreal. So for me, you're saying the same thing, really. It's all the same, really. And some people put it like that. Some people say what's been spoken about is everything is actually, it's real and unreal. Or they can also say it's neither real nor unreal. And for me, they're just saying the same thing in a different way. And all it is really highlighting that this sense that you have of this dualistic dream and dichotomy of things being real and then things being unreal is in the dream of you, really. There's no, things are only real when you feel real. And then there's that half alive sense of living in the real. So everything is an object to my subject. You're an object to me because I feel like an individual. So you are a person. So I don't actually see you as you actually are, because if I think I see another individual, I don't actually see you. And it's the same with the tree outside and everything. You're seeing an object. So you see everything as real only because you feel real. And then it's a half alive kind of thing then, because you're wondering, something feels as though things aren't being seen as they actually are. And of course they aren't, because it is an objectivization of everything, because it's a subject-object reality.
What is always and forever here and now?
There's no here and now, only in the dream, in the story. So as an individual, there's a sense of living in a linear causal reality where time is real. Time is not a function in the story, it's an actual real phenomena, just as I'm real. And therefore, space and time and causality I would describe them as the same from you could say from looking at from a different perspective. So that gives the impression of a here and a now. The now then is bordered or boundaried by a then, a past and a future. And it can be seen at any time that that's a complete story. And there's no now, just as there's no future that you're moving into or a past that you're leaving behind, only from the sense of you feeling separate, that's all. So it's the same thing when you say here or now, it's the same actual, the sense of space or time. It's like an interface from your sense of separation. And therefore, it's only an appearance.
What is unforgettable?
I don't know what I would say to that. I think lots of things can be forgotten. Where I left my keys. I mean, the sense of what's being suggested here is totally known by everyone. So when this is just a sharing, I'm not a teacher. There are no teachers. There are no gurus. There's no authority at all. It's just a sharing. And when it's shared like this, when there's a gathering of however many, 2 or more, everyone actually knows what's been said. It completely. And the reason they know it is they are it. I don't really mean intellectually know it, but they are already the childlike wonder that was yearned for. So they already are that. But overlaying that is the sense of being an individual, which kind of is the forgetting that there's just this or there's, it's like an addition of this sense of me. So really, but it's that's not a knowing that you would think of as a knowing, because actually it's just a being, which is it's an isness that isn't. It's not knowable or graspable, but it's also inescapable. It's simply aliveness, and that's all everyone is, because that's all there is. And then there seems to be this sense of separation then that appears to like an overlay onto that.
Who are you really?
Nobody, nothing, neither are you. So there's no, like people have a sense of their search for the real me. You know, I want to find who I truly am and all of this. And all they will find is another narrative, and possibly a narrative to replace an old narrative, which could feel more authentic to them. Like maybe they feel in the story, I was trying to please other people. I took this job to keep my mother happy because I thought my parents wanted me to be this. I thought this would be a good thing to be. And then I realized that's not who I was. And I went on and I found my authentic self. And that's actually just also a story. So the suggestion here is, yes, that could be true in the story that there was a realization that I feel like I'm actually living my life for what appear as other people. And that could feel liberating. But this suggestion is not really about any of that. This suggestion is that actually there's no authentic, true self there. There's no thing there. There's no separate you. So this whole communication is about a loss, actually. It's about a loss of this lived sense of me.
What answers every question?
Just this aliveness. So it's when people come to the meetings, they feel that they have a question, and they do have a question, because energetically, when you feel that you have a life, it feels like there's something missing. So therefore, energetically, you come with a question: is what is it that I'm looking for? So it's a feature of the meeting. It's an aspect of the sharing. The individual appears to come with questions and thinks that there is an answer to the question, because the lived reality for the individual is one of a logical, linear knowing, in which they have a question, and then they feel that is answered. Then they have another question, and that's answered. So it's a process of knowing. So actually, this is very different, because this is a sharing in which it's not that there's an answer to the question, which would be logical. It's that it can be seen there's no question. So the question is directly from a sense of being separate. And the question is really, why have I lost everything? Why have I lost wholeness? And the answer is that you haven't, because there's no you. And so it can be that the questions just aren't, there's no more questions. So it's very, 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 very simple. What's yearned for and what's been spoken about and suggested is extremely simple, and that therein is the issue, because for the individual, or the apparent issue, because for the individual, they live in complexity and difficult and hard to get to. So they feel that there's an answer to this question, and it must be just out. It feels as though it's just outside my reach. I can almost grab it, and so simple and ordinary is continually rejected in favor of complex and difficult, because this is the energy of feeling separate, which maintains the energy of feeling separate, which appears to maintain the sense of me.
How simple? Can it get any simpler?
No, it's indescribable how simple. What is being yearned for by every apparent individual is indescribably ordinary and simple, and it is already the case. There's never been a separate you. There's never been an individual. When this energetic sense of being an individual arises, then there's a sense that this isn't it then, because there's a lived sense. Like feeling like an individual is not an idea. It's a lived energetic sense of there's an out there and there's a me in here. It really does feel like I'm sitting on the chair if I'm an individual. You will feel that I'm speaking to you now, and it will feel that this is really happening. So this simplicity of just is always almost like the constant lover that never goes anywhere, or to borrow a Tony Parsons term, it's just all there is already, and it's just inescapable. But energetically, the individual is continually rejecting it in favor of its idea of what's being yearned for. And then that will just continue until it all appears to collapse.
So you speak of dualisms and dichotomies.
Yeah.
The belief with I am inside something. Is that, what is the connection with this and the perception of dualities?
So the suggestion is that there's just what's appearing to happen. There's just energy, like sound happens, thoughts happen, sitting happens. There's just energy, aliveness. And then in aliveness, energetically, it feels very real that there's a me. And then you have a dualistic reality. Then you have a dualistic dream. And that dualistic dream then is fundamentally that there's a life and there's me with my life. And so there you have your dichotomy of life, death, special, not special, good and bad. So all of these apparent opposites or dualities they are from the sense of your separate sense of you and the world. And it's very simple, actually. It kind of it can appear to be complex. People talking about dichotomies and duality and blah, 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 and these terms and everything, but they're very, very simple, actually. It's just that when you have a life, it appears as this play of opposites that appears real then. Good, bad, special, not special. And if it's not one, then it must be the other. And this is how we kind of, we feel that we experience life then.
So the belief of a me, I'm inside, therefore all the other stuff is outside.
Yeah.
So there's some sort of an assumption that there is a boundary between where I stop and the rest of not me starts.
Yeah.
And this is some sort of the separating line, like a division of some sort.
A boundary, yeah.
The boundary. And
yeah.
is that, what is this boundary made of?
Nothing. There is no boundary. So it feels like there's a boundary, and you feel like, in the same way that if you have France and Spain, or Austria and Germany, so you have Austria and Germany, and everybody knows where Germany begins and where Austria begins. And if you drive a car, you will have to stop. Maybe, no, you won't now, but you would have at times had to stop and show your passport. But now it's free flow. But you can see where it begins and it ends. If a bird flies overhead and looks down, it doesn't see Austria and Germany. It sees mountains and fields. So there's a game.
A game.
It's a game going on. And the game feels absolutely real then. So that when we speak and you say to me about Germany and Austria, I can follow what you're saying. But for an individual, it feels like, well, no, there is a Germany. Germany is real and Austria is real. And then it's kind of like that, in that I would then suggest in the story, in the narrative, it's real. It's real. I know what you're talking about. It's absolutely unreal because it's a narrative. It's actually just a story. So the same as when the individual, they will feel that there's a boundary between me, like the skin is my boundary. The skin is my boundary between the world outside and inside. And then people kind of, when they first learn about osmosis, they can kind of get a bit... I remember learning about osmosis in biology. And I remember it blew my mind because I had this idea of this solidity, everything being, and it's permeable. I mean, it's, and then it was kind of strange. Then this boundary isn't as real. Well, actually, the boundary of you is not an idea. There is a conceptual element to it, but I would suggest that the sense of being an individual is absolutely energetic. So it's an energetic, cellular, felt sensation that you're here. It's not an idea. It's not a concept. It's not. If it was just a concept, you could study it and go to university and learn about non-duality and Advaita Vedanta, and then, oh, I'm not an individual. Oh, now I know I'm not an individual. Oh, then I'm not an individual. Feeling like an individual is an energetic, really lived sense of that boundary being there. And that boundary will feel different for different people. Some people feel very much up here and kind of behind the eyes, and not so much even, they feel even a little bit disembodied from, and then other people feel fully in the body, like fully in the body and not so much up here. And so it's different for everyone, but it's generally it's a sense of a you and a world out there.
But if looked at, the boundary would check out to be not really there.
Never find it.
So,
You'll never find the you. Like, you will never find you, and the reason you won't find you is there's no you to find. So therefore, you have these prescriptive kind of teachings of self-inquiry, but they're all nonsense, because who is it that's going to find that they're not there? So the actual apparent individual loves all of these. He loves all of these exercises to trace back the I and all of these things, because it feeds the sense of feeling like an individual who can do something to find that they're not an individual.
So the I that looks for myself, 1, 2, that's part of the story, the dream.
Yeah. So it's very simple. This is it's incredible, actually. It's so stunning that what we're all yearning for once we feel like we have a life is so stunningly simple and ordinary that that's how it appears to hide from us.
In plain sight?
In plain sight, exactly. It's the open secret, as we and Tony Parsons called his thing. And the open secret is a beautiful expression, because it's hiding not by being esoteric and difficult and complex as we would imagine. Oh, my friend went to an ashram in India for 20 years and then his sense of me fell away and now blah, 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 blah. Because the mind would like it to be like that, really, really, really difficult.
Like climbing a mountain.
Yes, because that's of course we think like that, because that's our kind of lived reality, is one of progressively moving through understanding and knowing and getting more and more complex. And actually the genius of it is that what we're yearning for appears to hide by simply being whatever is appearing to happen.
So it's too obvious.
It's too obvious for the individual. It's too ordinary.
Too easy.
It's too ordinary, obvious, easy, simple, direct, and so it's kind of when you suggest this, often sometimes it's boring. This is very boring. What are you talking about? It's very boring. This. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay, but it's kind of boring. Give me something. Give me. So the parent individual is going for the special experiences. And then because in their reality, they feel they have these special experiences. So for, say maybe they do a week meditation course or a 10-day meditation course, and they have these kind of outer body things where they're above themselves and they're looking down and they feel complete, absolute love, then they sense that was it then. So the wholeness that people are talking about, I tasted that 3 years ago in Bali on my Vipassana retreat, or whatever it is, or when I did ayahuasca, or I did psilocybin, or I did 5-MeO-DMT, or I did this, or I did that, or when, it doesn't matter. And so they contrast that then, this peak experience, with this kind of, yeah, but I hear what you're saying, but this isn't the wholeness that I saw 3 years ago. Because what I saw, I didn't feel like, and what that is simply an experience that contrasts with just this aliveness. So when you feel separate, then it confirms to you as an individual, this isn't quite it, because it's not that peak experience. And actually what's being suggested is not an experience. It's not an experience. No matter how explosive and orgasmic the experience appears to be, that's also just aliveness also. Of course, it's not that isn't it, but what's being suggested is very, very, very simple and ordinary. An experience is for the individual. So if you think about it, it's the individual who has an experience, because they feel separate to what's happening, and there's what's happening is happening to them. So out of that, they pull an experience. So an experience is just actually a narrative or a story.
And even a good story is just a story.
Doesn't matter, good, bad, doesn't matter. When this lived sense of being a you, good and bad collapse. And something that you could have in the narrative of your story, you could have had all of these really traumatic things happen to me, and and you could have had whatever narrative you wanted. You could have had a resilience narrative around that I overcame that trauma. That trauma made me the strong person I am. Or you could have a victim story about that. That's why I'm fucked up. That's why that's why nobody loves me. That could be your story. And blah, blah, blah. And these positive things happened to me. And so you'd have the negative and you'd have the positive. if there's no sense of you anymore, it's all a narrative. It's all just a story, because it's very clearly seen by nobody that nothing ever happened to me. Traumatic things appeared to happen. Pain appeared to arise. Pleasure appeared to arise. And it's all a narrative. So this is what's been suggested. It's very simple. There's never been a you there, ever.
So without the you or the me, all those pairs of opposites,
Yeah.
all the full bag of all of them loses the grip.
Yeah. So it's indescribable. I can't describe what it's like for this to, it's not a happening. So nothing happens. This is nothing appearing to happen. And so when this lived sense of feeling separate just isn't there anymore, nobody can describe that. Nobody can describe it. But in general, what you're going from a lived sense of everything being real, and it's happening to me, and because there's a me, there's a you. It's happening to you, and everything is real, and it's moving in time. Yeah, and two, indescribably, there's just what's appearing to happen. There's just aliveness. And there's no, that subject object collapses because there's no subject anymore, which is the me. So how could there be an object? There could only ever be an object when there's a subject. So there's just aliveness. And then you meet bodies and they speak to you, and all there is energy. And it's so ridiculously simple that you could never describe it. And nobody has ever been able to describe it. And there you go. And it just, and it appears to happen. It appears there's an interest and there's a resonance with this, and people's sense of separateness appears to fall away. But it's not a happening.
You said the word layering, so so there's aliveness in your terms, and the me is some sort of forgetting of that aliveness, as a belief overlaying.
I would say to me is all there is energy. So energy appears as this contracted, separate sense of an entity called the individual, called me. So that for me is energetic, like cellular, completely cellular. So it's a contracted sense of being in the body, of which it appears to be run, the narrative of it largely up here, and they can identify different sections of the brain that appear to have the core function seems to be run the narrative of you, whatever. But it's not an idea to feel separate. It's a lived sense. But all it is there's never a real you there. But when it feels there's a real you there, it feels absolutely real. So it feels then, if I felt like an individual, I would really feel that I'm sitting on this chair, and I would really feel that I'm talking to you, and that you're asking questions and I'm answering them, for instance. And as opposed to that, then it's the same and it's completely different. And the way that it's different is actually everything is new suddenly. And the reason it's new is it's not, the linear causal reality has collapsed of you living your life in time. And there's just aliveness, and aliveness is nothing being everything. So it's there and it's not there. It's life. There is no life and death. Life is death and death is life. So everything is always new and simply as it appears to be. It's not describable or knowable. And then when somebody speaks about feeling like an individual, it's clearly a narrative or a story. It's so that your sense of feeling like an individual is no longer, immediately there's nobody else. There was only somebody else from when there was a feeling of you. So already then there's just wholeness, and then in that wholeness or aliveness or whatever, oneness, if you want to solve, well, it doesn't matter what word you, then people speak as if they have a life. And it doesn't matter. It's just okay. But then they can, when you don't feel like an individual, you can't obviously see the individual because there's no individual to see. But you can see that they think they're an individual. And there's no agenda to change that either. But there's just because how could there be? To change that would mean that you would actually see an individual to begin with. So all this is then is a sharing without agenda, actually. It's just a sharing that's heard as it's heard.
The me as somehow coming with the idea of in the narrative, I am in a box, somehow moving through time and space, inside, outside, therefore linearity, before, after, cause and effect. And the non-duality suggests this to be misunderstanding.
An energetic sense, confusion.
Confusion.
Yeah, you could say that, but it's just it's an appearance. It's an appearance. It's a dream. It's a story. It's a story. So in that story, then it doesn't feel like a story. It doesn't feel like a narrative. Like if you go and speak to people and say, "Oh, tell me about the narrative called you." So what do you mean the narrative called me? But if you said to them, "Tell me about your life," they say, "Oh, my life," and they'd say, "I'm married. I'm not married. I've got a boyfriend, a girlfriend. I have children. I don't have children. I work in this job." So people feel that there's a real me there that has a job, that has all that. So then, but it's clearly just a narrative. So the apparent shift is from feeling everything is real and there's a real me to that there's just what's appearing to happen, and that felt real and solid is actually empty. It's just a story, which is terrifying. What's being suggested here is terrifying to the individual. What's being yearned for when you feel like an individual is terrifying. You don't actually want it. You think you want it, but you want your version of it. And your version of it is the one that feeds the sense of you. So what we're all yearning for, really, what's most yearned for is what we're most afraid of.
So the terror is that
there's no me.
I don't actually exist.
I'm not actually there. I'm not actually here. Like there's no me that's thinking these thoughts. There's no me that's seeing. There's no me that's smelling. There's no me that has a life. So it's the same fear of death. Like the fear of death is the fear of your absence. Actually, that's what you're afraid of. And equally, of course, the fear we're afraid of living. We're afraid of living. We're afraid of living. We think we're afraid of dying, but you could say equally you're afraid of living. And the reason you're afraid of living, fully living, full aliveness, is it doesn't leave any room for you. Actually, full on aliveness, there's no room for you. There's just the immediacy of what's happening. And you sense that, and you're afraid of getting squeezed out. So you're continually verifying that the air conditioning, I can hear the air conditioning, I can feel what it's like to sit. I'm looking at that person, they're looking at me, and a constant kind of narrative around that, which can be very, very neurotic. And how do I relate to you? What does this person think of me? Is this going well? Is it not going well? It's all this nonsense that it's an overlay it's just a blah, blah, blah.
Can we translate non-duality, it is not two, to say it is one?
Yeah, I mean, the reason that people say not two, Advaita Vedanta, is my understanding is that because I can't say what I'm trying to say here, it can't be said. The reason it can't be said is it's not understandable, it's not knowable, and it's not actually a concept. But we can talk around it, and we can kind of illuminate what it isn't. And so the whole sharing is energetic. So therefore, saying not to is not to is a way, is a reflection of that I can't say what's been said, so I can't say one. So another way of saying one is not two. You see? So that's my understanding of it. Now, to be really clear, there's no such thing as non-duality. There's no such thing as non-duality. Like non-duality, when I see non-duality now, it's mostly I see almost like a religion or it's another, so most, the majority of communications are absolutely dualistic in that they're addressing somebody, often explicitly telling them what they can do to discover that there's no them, or what they can do to not be there. So there's no such thing as non-duality. There's no such thing as Advaita, any of those things. These are just terms that point.
Yeah, because if as a me and you tell me one, I say this one or another one. When we start counting, I count from 0 to 1.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I go jump because of this.
Yeah.
Again, misunderstandings being thrown around.
Like fundamentally, though, like I again come back to this is a very, very, very simple suggestion. It could not be more simple. And if you think of two, not two, it's not, there's not you and the world. It's that simple. It's very simple. There's not life and you with your life. I mean, it's ridiculous. Even if you think of it logically, it's ridiculous. How can you have a life? It is absolutely fucking ridiculous. It does not stand up to any kind of scrutiny. But when there is a sense of that you have a life, then you really, really, really feel that you are living your life. And everything in the story confirms that. So you meet other people, what you perceive as other people, and they are asking you about your life, and you are asking them about their life. So they have their life, I have my life. All of my teachers, my parents, my teachers, my family, everything has confirmed to me continually that I have a life and I'm living my life. So it mostly then goes unquestioned. Or if it is questioned, I think many, many people land on this like, but how can I have a life? Or who is this me or whatever? But the sense of it is, well, that's just, I have no confirmation of that being true. So it's just a stupid idea for me because everyone agrees that I do have a life. So therefore, I must have a life then. And it can people kind of fleetingly think about, there's nobody who's not thinking about this actually, by the way, but people kind of even arrive at what I'm saying, but then they look for a confirmation from an authority that it's true. And then if they don't get that, they kind of move away from it sometimes. Or else they move into spirituality, non-duality, Advaita, these things, which then they see an authority then, and then they're under that, in that dream, they see a teacher then, and a guru, and all they're doing really is this sense of the self reaffirming itself through some sort of ideology or belief system as well. But none of this is right or wrong, by the way. It's just what appears to happen.
Is it something that comes with birth? Is it something that starts feeling more solid over our age when we grow up?
Yeah. So energetically, like there's a when I had kids, I read about this that it's generally accepted that the baby does not differentiate from the mother at all until about 6 months, and the baby sees the mother, and I feel starts to see the father. A lot of fathers will notice this when the baby's a very small infant. They don't see the father at all, and it's like one day the child kind of notices you, and it's like, oh, who are you, and then can be kind of like drawn to the father. But it's all the mother, and I've read many times that there's no differentiation, and then there's the mother. So energetically, then there's the mother as, there's the mother, And then there becomes, energetically, there becomes then a sense of kind of me. And as the child grows up, this sense of me grows, and their sense of their conceptual sense of themselves and their lived sense of feeling separate appears to grow. Now you go make your way in the world. And so then there's a lived sense of I'm making my way in the world. And it's that dualistic dream. And it feels absolutely real. It's not right or wrong. It's not anything, but there's a question. For some, that question is very, 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 very quiet. It's not very prominent. And when I say question, I mean I also mean a yearning. There's a yearning as well. There's a question and a yearning of something. There's something that I can't put my finger on. I just don't know what it is, but there's something. And for some, then that sensitivity is much greater. It's much, much greater. And to the point that it's, sell the house and move to India. Nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. I have to, and it can all consuming. But usually it's somewhere kind of along that. So that's the beautiful play of life. Some people feel that they're living their life and they feel there's not really so much of a question, but for others there's a yearning then, and it's a sense of, and there's a sensitivity, and then there's all of these suggestions then from different people, and some of those people call themselves teachers, and some call themselves gurus. And from this, there's no authority, there's no guru, there's no teacher, there's no, because actually what you're yearning for is nothing to do with knowing, so that nobody actually knows this. So this sharing then comes from nothing. It comes from nothing, and it's clearest from a speaker when it's clearly not known by them. They're not speaking to anyone because they can't see anybody to speak to, and they're not speaking from knowing. So they're not trying to impart knowledge to you. So, and then what it is then is there's another possibility that is energetic is there, and it's impossible to describe, but there's a boundlessness to it that is different to the one where you're being spoken to. So energetically, the apparent individual, we're in a room now and we'll have a meeting in a few hours, but people will come here to the door and we'll all sit around. The individual, the apparent individual, wants to be spoken to and wants to be fed and acknowledged. Hello, I'm here. Did you see I'm here? So energetically, if there's a sharing from a knowing to an apparent individual, energetically, that's completely different to what's going to apparently happen here. And for the individual, they can be almost imbued energetically with a sense of hope and experiential kind of wow in the individual one that will last 5 hours or 5 days or 5 minutes. And then they go for another one and another one and another one. And the other communication, which is now being shared more, there are more speakers now that share in this manner. And the other communication doesn't see the individual at all, is not from knowing, and energetically is different. Is actually that's the one the individual does not want to be in the room, actually. The individual wants to go out the room again. Or else another way of running away is to sit here and not hear what's been said by just filtering it. Oh, this is the same as this and blah, blah, blah. People can sit through 5 days and not hear a word of it. It's amazing. And that's just what appears to happen. But when there's an openness to this, there's there's a sense of a boundlessness. And it's indescribable, and it's that's what it is really. These sharings are just about a resonance. They're all energetic, and it's just heard as it's heard. It doesn't matter. You could say, "Oh, this is a load of bullshit," and go out, and that's aliveness, saying this is a load of bullshit and appearing to go out of the room. There's no agenda for this not to appear to happen. And that wouldn't be right or wrong or anything, any more than someone who says, wow, this is amazing or whatever. It doesn't matter, actually. Yeah.
Okay, good. So, yeah, trying to bring it home.
Bring it home.
Okay,
This is home. You're never not home.
let's adjectives. So we've now one. It's simple,
Yeah,
boundless.
yeah. So, like boundless, I like the word boundless because as an individual, an apparent individual, everything is bounded and known and bounded. And some people feel very bounded by time. For instance, like their sense of their story of me will be hours and minutes, and another apparent individual will have a very kind of ephemeral kind of their sense of time is don't care about time. But so if you suggest there's no time to the first person, they will kind of no. And I've had this that people go, no, there is time, because their sense of them is very much tied in with time, and the other person it isn't. So everyone's sense of themselves being an individual is unique to them, but there'll be a sense of that boundary in some way, shape or form, in that their sense of being in the body and the world. There's a world and there's me, and I'm living my life. So the suggestion is very, very simple and obvious that there's no you that's living their life. There's just what's appearing to happen. And that resonates as it resonates. It just doesn't matter. So there tends to be questions and this and that, but then that sense of separation can appear to completely collapse. And it's very simple. It's not what you could ever imagine it to be. It's very ordinary and simple. And it's, what I'd always yearned for and I'd been kind of running around looking for had never gone anywhere. It had just been what was appearing to happen. And that's the way it is.
You never left home.
Yeah, so you'd never gone anywhere. You'd been lost looking for what you feel you were looking for. And that's also just aliveness, and will also collapse, obviously, because we will all physically die, apparently. So on physical death, it's just the release from the story that you have a life. So all there is liberation.
Yeah, very good. So when, let's say, we open a dictionary, we find non-duality, and if you could propose a quote, a sentence, we slap next to it, what would you propose?
I don't give a shit about non-duality, to be honest. I like, it's just, there's no words. There are no words to describe. It's just a sharing, that's all. And I've no issue also with non-duality. I understand it's a label, it's a kind of an umbrella term under which it can be shared. Another possibility can be shared. So I don't mind. There are all these speakers. Some of them are clearly speaking to some of them aren't. I don't care. I really don't. There's no importance to me. It's just isness, aliveness. It's not to do with the words, really. I don't get bogged down in definitions.
Beautiful. That's perfect to stop. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
Dear friend of philosophy, thank you for joining the Key Philosophy Quest. If you seek more Key Philosophy, visit www.keyphilosophy.com.